Greetings, and welcome to Eye of the Beholder, where we review the Dungeons & Dragons miniatures created by WOTC and WizKids during the 2003 through 2023 time frame. With this video, we'll finally finish up with Monstrous Humanoid miniatures that we started reviewing 6 videos ago. Enjoy! The Tabaxi, also known as catfolk, are feline humanoid jungle dwellers, and as anyone who's watched a cat in action, add human intelligence to their grace, speed, and flexibility, and you get a tabaxi. Most catfolk tend to avoid interaction with other races, but the old adage, curiosity killed the cat, does apply to some, infecting them with wanderlust. Fun fact, we got a tabaxi cameo in the Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie. Did you catch it?
We get our first tabaxi in WotC's third set, 2004's Archfiends. Called a catfolk, he is armed with a bow in ready position, along with a slender long sword on his waist belt. Clad in tight brown leather trousers and tunic over his tawny fur, with a pose that has him in a half crouch, slightly leaning backwards, but up on the balls of his feet. The position of the offhand indicates he has just loosed an arrow. Score: Paint 13, Pose 16, Playability 16, Pizzazz 15, for a score of 60. A year later, we get our next tabaxi, this Catfolk Wilder mini from 2005's Death Knell set. Tabaxi cover the gamut of fur colorings, and this one definitely leans towards panther. She, definitely a she, is armed with twin blades held at the ready, her tight black leather armor covering everything but her head, hands, and feet. Close examination reveals yellow eyes and a pink nose, again, very panther-like. Score: Paint 14, Pose 15, Playability 15, Pizzazz 17, for a score of 61. As the Tomb of Annihilation adventure mostly takes place in a jungle setting, it makes sense that the WizKids' first 2 tabaxi minis come from the same set. Again, we get 2 variants, but WizKids does a very good job differentiating between the 2. Our first, a tabaxi minstrel, is armed with a lute and wears loose-fitting clothing that do nothing to conceal the leopard spots on his arms and legs. The second, called a tabaxi hunter, carries a dagger and rocks darker clothing. Interestingly, WizKids give their catfolks tails, something the WotC versions do not have. Score: Paint 14, Pose 16, Playability 15, Pizzazz 15, for a score of 60. Our final tabaxi miniature comes from 2020's Fangs and Talons set, and if I were running a tabaxi PC, this would be the mini I would use. Called a tabaxi fighter, he is armed with a long sword and small round shield, and leather tunic over brown trousers and a blue shirt. Excellent facial features on this one. To me, it looks more jaguar than leopard. The slight lean forward combined with the flared tail indicates movement. The fact that it's a rare does ding playability a bit, but again, what a great PC catfolk miniature. Score: Paint 18, Pose 21, Playability 12, Pizzazz 17, for a score of 68.
The thru are another insectoid humanoid race, closely resembling praying mantises. Sporting 6 limbs and a hardened carapace which they rely on over armor, they tend to be nomads and hunters, wandering alone or in small bands, living off the land. They also have a remarkable number of abilities. They can't fly but can jump quite far. Their bite is poisonous, causing paralysis, and, oh yeah, they're natural scions, which makes them wildly unpredictable. Fun fact, they really enjoy the taste of elf.
WotC thought so much about thru that they put one in their inaugural set, 2003's Harbinger. Called a thru Ranger, he is armed with one of their traditional weapons, a double-bladed poleaxe with crescent-shaped blades called a ginthka, which he holds at the ready with 3 of his 4 arms. Brown body with a loosely worn darker brown cloak does little to show much in the way of detail, but we do see a backpack at the waist. Also, note the red eyes. Score: Paint 11, Pose 13, Playability 12, Pizzazz 13 for a score of 49. Two years later, we get this Thry-Kreen Barbarian miniature in 2005's Angel Fire set. This guy seems slightly more battle ready, wielding a wavy-bladed longsword high above his head, while sporting a couple short swords in two other hands. Despite the relatively dullness of the color palette, I really like the detailing on this one, especially the elaborate chest harness topped with upturned padroons on the torso. And again, red eyes. Score: Paint 13, Pose 16, Playability 15, Pizzazz 18 for a score of 62. WOTC gave us a rare Thry-Kreen in their first set and ends with a rare Thry-Kreen in their last set. From 2010's Lords of Madness, we get this Thry-Kreen Mantis Warrior. Physically taller than the previous versions, we also get a carapace more tan than brown. Armed with both Githka and another traditional weapon, the Chachka, which is basically a throwing star. And he definitely appears to be about throw it, as he leans slightly back with throwing arm outstretched, his Githka tucked behind his back to avoid interfering with the throw. We also get white eyes over red on this one, which matches the claws on his hands and feet. Score: Paint 17, Pose 23, Playability 20, Pizzazz 22 for a score of 82. WOTC goes full bananas with their pair of Thry-Kreen variants from 2016's Storm King's Thunder, and for once, I don't mind the duplication. With the first armed with a double-bladed serrated poleaxe, along with twin swords, and the second sporting the same swords but with a Chachka instead of a poleaxe, gives us enough of a difference to make them both eminently playable. I like how the chest harness and brown loincloth is offset by the yellow carapace. You definitely need a couple of these for your next Thry-Kreen hunting party. Score: Paint 17, Pose 15, Playability 15, Pizzazz 19 for a score of 66. Anyone who's watched a lot of my videos know how I feel about Spelljammer. D&D in space is stupid. I dislike it so much that it's the only set I refuse to collect, just picking up certain miniatures that can be used for normal D&D. This Thry-Kreen certainly qualifies, standing taller than all previous versions. We go back to brown on brown for carapace and clothing, but unlike previous version, this one rocks a shield to go with the longsword. Here's something. Look between his sword arm and body. It looks like one of his arms had been severed. Note the bandage. Finally, if you need a bunch of Thry-Kreens, this is probably your best option, as it's the only common. Score: Paint 12, Pose 13, Playability 16, Pizzazz 12 for a score of 53. Our final Thry-Kreen comes in 2023's Sand and Stone set, and WizKids goes back to a yellow carapace. Looking thinner than previous minis, he carries only the same two-bladed poleaxe as the Storm King's Thunder mini that, based on its color, appears to be fashioned out of bone rather than steel. Pose almost looks like he's on sentry duty, standing somewhat at attention with the pole arm held vertically. Score: Paint 14, Pose 12, Playability 14, Pizzazz 13 for a score of 53.
If any race has an excuse for incurable wanderlust, it would be the Turtles, as they literally carry their house on their back. Tortoise-like humanoids who prefer temperate climates, Turtles roam the realms, eager to learn new cultures, make new friends, and discover beauty in all its forms. Capable fighters who, like a tortoise, are able to withdraw into their shells for protection if necessary. Fun fact, they are not particularly good swimmers, but due to their high buoyancy, can float like a leaf on the wind.
WOTC never got around to a Turtle Mini, and it took WizKids until 2019's Volos and Mordenkainen's Foe set to do so. And why stop at one when you can give us two? The common turtle and the uncommon turtle druid. Paint and poses are exactly the same for both, a mixture of greens for the bodies and shell, and a pose open to interpretation. The only difference is the translucent yellow spell effect spewing from the druid's hand. Usable, but would like to see something more, especially around the face. Score: Paint 13, Pose 12, Playability 15, Pizzazz 15, for a score of 55. Four years later, we get more. In 2023's Season Shore set, again giving us the same two options, a standard turtle and a turtle druid, except here, the druid is a rare. Both are much better than the previous offerings. The common is bulkier and armed with a two-handed axe, which he holds at the ready in front of his body. We also get better contrast between the green of the body and the lighter green of the shell, which, thanks to a generous dark wash, displays much better detailing. Score: Paint 17, Pose 14, Playability 20, Pizzazz 21, for a score of 72. The Turtle Druid has an even more color contrast between the light green of his skin and the brown shell. He is posed holding aloft a very intricate looking staff in his right hand, while a water-like spell effect emanates from his left. I also really like the detailing of the various items he has strapped to his belt. Score: Paint 15, Pose 17, Playability 18, Pizzazz 18, for a score of 68.
Why centaurs are considered monstrosities, but Wemics are considered monstrous humanoids is anyone's guess. With a lower torso and head of a lion, but the chest and arms of a man, the Wemic are a nomadic people, living in prides and following the herds of animals they feed on. As one can imagine, they are excellent hunters and fierce fighters, both with tooth and claw as well as any weapon they wield. Fun fact, Wemic cubs are highly valued by other races, who raise them as bodyguards and fighters.
Our only Wemic, called a Wemic Barbarian, comes from WOTC's War Drum set of 2006. I really like this one. The positioning of the back legs indicate we capture the Wemic in mid-charge, roaring out his battle challenge while leading with a steel-tipped spear. A tawny brown body offers a nice contrast to the blonder mane, as well as the bronze gauntlets and the belt buckle, nicely detailed by the way, as well as whatever that is that's strapped to his chest. Rarity does limit playability, however, but still, très cool. Score: Paint 23, Pose 25, Playability 14, Pizzazz 25, for a score of 87.
Witch knives, or as they call themselves, thanes, are psionically powerful goblin-like creatures. Their psionic abilities lean toward mind control. They are rumored to be able to compel their victims to do their bidding. As a result, they're not particularly popular among other races. Due to this, they tend to live in small settlements far away from others.
Another one-off, our only witch knife comes from 2006's War of the Dragon Queen set. Posed facing his foe, shoulders hunched up, spear and shield in hand, and a face that looks like a goblin got busy with an earth elemental. This mini can absolutely be used as a goblin leader in a pinch, and the fact that it's a common would make it easy to get a bunch to ambush the party. Think of the fun the DM could have as the PCs fail their saving throws against multiple psionic attacks. Score: Paint 13, Pose 15, Playability 15, Pizzazz 13, for a score of 56.
The Zeph are another race of psionically blessed humanoids who live in the dark canyons and crevices of the earth. Unlike witch knives, they are generally friendly and curious creatures, fond of traveling and using their psionic abilities to do their best flash impression with intense bursts of speed.
WOTC gives us our only Zeph, called a Zeph Warrior, in 2005's Angel Fire set, and it's fine, I guess. The muted colors of his clothing and armor fit his environment, and I do like the very long barbed spear he has grounded in front of him. The braided hair running down the back is creature correct as well. I just don't know how often you're going to run into a band of Zeph, and they are not really interesting enough for an interesting enough creature to plan an encounter around. Score: Paint 11, Pose 14, Playability 8, Pizzazz 12, for a score of 45.
Zvarts were once gnomes who were captured by Fomorians and enslaved in the Shadow Dark. Weak and cowardly, especially among humans, Zvarts tend to live in the dark places, hating basically everything, with special animus toward giantkind. While weak individually, they will coalesce into large groups if the rewards are high enough, attacking in ambush, preferably when their foes are asleep.
WizKids gives us our only Zvart in 2022's Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse set. Small of stature and very blue of body, we get a pretty solid facial expression, especially for a smaller mini. You just know this guy hates everyone. Posed with a dagger at the ready, WizKids wisely makes this a common, allowing the DM to acquire a bunch at little cost for a little nighttime ambush of the PCs. Score: Paint 14, Pose 15, Playability 18, Pizzazz 13, for a score of 60.
And with that, we are finally finished with Monstrous Humanoids. Thanks to all who stuck it through to the end, and as a reward, we'll be featuring an even more diverse group of miniatures in our next video as we tackle monstrosities. As always, please feel free to like, subscribe, and comment. I, the Beholder, signing off.